actually Sam's wife. This is Luigi, my brother, one of the co-founders as well from Maker Mix and Maker Industry. He's Blaine. He's been helping us a lot too. Have you guys seen a 3D printer before? Is this your first time?
My first time.
Okay. We actually, I'm going to give you a little of the background of how we started, what we're doing. Sam is going to be here in a little bit. But we started like a few years ago back in Mexico, actually. We recently started moving here. We started designing our own 3D printers. We did a Kickstarter campaign back in November of 2013. We successfully funded. In November, we raised almost $60,000 in 30 days. This actually was the printer that we had in Kickstarter. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can print with different materials. The most common one is usually plastic, which is the PLA. I don't know if you can see the roll here in the back. This is pretty much the printer foot. What made us unique on the Kickstarter, that's what we did, the MM1, is that it has a design that it not only allows you to print with plastic, but you can actually print with different materials. The high temperature materials, chocolate, clay, flexible materials. Like for instance, this mask, we made it for my son like last October for Halloween. And as you can see, it's a very flexible material. Some of them they're really hard, like this one, you know. And you can also, one of the advantages of this printer as well, most of the times you can just print with one color at a time. It has a module that actually you can print with two different materials at the same time. Doesn't look like that, well, it's kind of a similar concept. So it prints with one material and so you can be combining colors at the same time.
And did you say the material was PVC?
It's plastic, PLA. I think that's right, Luigi? What's it for PLA? What it stands for?
PLA is polylactic acid. It's made from cornstarch, so it's a biodegradable material. But well, the cool thing about this one is that Adriana was talking about, we can print with multiple materials, like just changing what's ahead. Like this one thing, when we first got a printer, we got a single extruder printer, a regular printer, and 2 weeks after that, or 3 weeks after that, they released their 2X version with two heads, so you can print two colors. And if we wanted to upgrade, we would have to sell the $2,000 printer and buy a new $2,500 printer. So we were like, this kind of. And it was the same thing, it's the same box, the same thing, and so we designed this printer that what allows you is that you can buy the single head extruder, and then if we release a two-head extruder, you only change that part, you know, you don't have to change the whole thing. So we started developing more modules for it, including, like Adriana said, paste extrusion, which allows you to charge serige, that's what you call it, serige with different materials like chocolate, clay, etc., etc. So
Pancakes.
also we're able to print with flexible materials because those are very tricky with most printers. So we made a module specifically for printing flexible materials. So if you want something that flexes, the city we have our factory in Mexico, the big factory where they make these ones, it's a shoemaking city. Like there's hundreds of shoe factories there. So it's very popular because they buy it to make Croc-like shoes and the prototype before they actually get the mold and everything. So it's really interesting. So pretty much talk about 3D printing, the process is, well, actually I want to tell you how I got here because I know you, well, I studied architecture, so I did a lot of models, but hand models for architecture. And I know you guys love it, but I used to not like that part. It was like stressing for me. I'm not patient, and it requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of sitting down and seeing the details and being very, very careful about it. So it frustrated me because I couldn't go fast enough. So I started getting into 3D printing, so I could just print the models, and so that's how I got started, printing little models like from houses, different things. And some things are really complex, and I know you have seen it when you make models by hand, right? Everything by hand. So, like, I don't know if you have seen like Frank Gehry's buildings, and well, trying to do that by hand is really complex. So, the way that something that we can do with 3D printing is this complexity of models that sometimes are very difficult to achieve by hand can be done by a 3D printer, or part of them, or it can be mixed. So the process is you model something in the computer, or you download a part. There's a page Thingiverse, or you can download like bridges. And I also know there's a full, I was researching, there's a full library of 3D models for trains. So it was really interesting. I didn't know, but when Sam told me we were coming, I made a little research. And there's a full library of 3D model trains, and it's really cool.
The company Shapeways.
Shapeways have some, but what I saw is just you download the models, and there's different, like all the different locomotives and everything. Oh, here's Jay. He's also with us. But so you can, it's easier. So if you wanna, like, let's say make a part of a train, you have access to the model, you can 3D print it, then you can cast it. You can. We were doing that at Makerspace the other day with one of his friends. He was doing chest parts, but you potentially can print a part and then like wax. The PLA is like wax, so you can cast it and create something from copper or something like that. So the details that you can start adding, it's really cool. Maybe you can explain us a little more.
So 3D printers are really useful. I'm a scale model builder. I've done some of what you guys do in the past. And the first thing I use 3D model printers for is detailing. So like windows on buildings, if you have a brick facade that needs to look like it's slightly broken, you can do that very easily on a 3D printer. And so it all comes down to being able to build the model or find the model that you want, import it, put it into your printer, which is very easy to do. Then you can get more complex stuff. Like I went out and I went out and just went on Google, and I found tracks you can do if you have a corner that you're having a hard time getting a bend on and the flex track doesn't work. You can actually 3D print yourself in your corner and then put your either metal track, or you can actually 3D print the entire track, including the rails. If you have a train car that you want to do a mod to, that a railroad had a specific design for their caboose, for example, you could find a caboose that you like and then 3D print the detailed pieces, or even 3D print the whole thing to make this specific caboose that you want. The 3D printer also holds paint very well. I have a couple of samples that I brought of stuff that I've done, and it's not perfect, but I'm still in the learning phase. So this is a 3D printed part. If you look at it very closely, there is some detail missing because I hadn't learned that to finish the surface, one good way, you sand it down, and then you take a thin layer of epoxy and you just put it over cloth, and it makes it look like it's metal. So you can paint, you can do decals, you can do all that kind of stuff. It all, basically any technique you use for, you can do powders, you can do anything you can normally do with a regular model kit with a 3D printed part. It just takes sometimes takes a little bit more cleanup depending on the model you print and how much support material there is. Yes?
Switching over to the software side, because
Right.
I know that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
If you look at, and I don't know this stuff, but
Right.
if you look to someone who's got CAD experience,
Right.
and you could work that relatively easily into this.
Oh, absolutely.
But then I'm thinking, for guys like me, can I scan a part? Will the computer?
So there are 3D scanners out there. They're a little expensive right now. They are coming down in price. Some 3D printers will actually have them built into them. Ours is not. But yes, you can scan parts. So we use all open source technology with ours. So you could very easily go on Google or talk to us, and we could run you through a couple-hour training course, and you could learn the basics so that you could build the shapes. And then you can either detail it the custom way by hand you're interested in, or we can teach you how to build it, the details so that you can put it onto a more basic terrain model.
So,
The reason I asked it is, you mentioned
Right.
you could have a crumbly wall.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty slick.
you can absolutely do that.
Most of us can do a nice brick wall and
Right.
even do the indentation to the border. But when you have a section of a crumble, that's pretty slick. And if I could scan that, I mean, otherwise, how do you get that to do that?
actually, there's something really interesting that I mean. I use this software called Blender, and there's called it's more technical. It's called a fracture modifier. So what it does, it actually simulates something breaking. So you can have a cube, and I had one where I had a wrecking ball coming and destroying a wall and things like
Okay.
that, and it calculates it. So that's how they do CG. They use simulation for all this. Like there's one that I did that is a donut. So to make the glazing of the donut is really difficult. So what I did is I simulated honey material like water, because you can simulate liquids, and I simulated the liquids coming into a part, and the computer does it all. So once you have that, you can export it and print it. And I have seen some really cool prints that they use it like simulations of water and then like frozen, and they print it like that, and they look really, really nice.
So a simple way to do a crumbling wall is you build your wall and you build your brick texture, which is basically just slightly modified rectangles sticking out of a flat sheet. And then you just draw your line, and you can actually remove chunks of it very simply. There's so basically what you do is you just take the piece that you want, you draw a line around the piece that you want to remove, extrude that, and you can just subtract it right away from the model, and it looks like it's a crumbling wall. It's very simple. It's one of the most basic functions of a CAD design program. Any other questions?
Also, when you ask about scanning, one bad thing about scanning right now is that usually the quality is not that great, or it has holes. So you still need to go and repair the mesh. There's pretty good software, but on the most accessible software, like something that well, I will be willing to pay for because it's on my budget. Usually you're gonna have to tweak the model a little bit, or you can have some like black holes where you cannot see that part of the part, because you usually use a laser to scan it and a camera to track that laser. So something very besides, it's really simple to, like, I saw a guy downloading the train model, and then he put like he turned it into spaceship, so he made like a train from the future. It was really cool, and he modeled everything, and there's a whole tutorial on how he does every part. It's really, maybe CAD looks difficult, but when you start getting into it, it's maybe not. Maybe it takes practice, but
It's very intimidating to start. The more you learn, the simpler it gets. And I'm a mechanical and architectural graphic CAD student at local PCC. So I started knowing nothing, and within a year, I was making all kinds of models. I 3D made this. I made a whole Lightsaber Hill. I've made Ghost Trap and Ghostbusters. I've made buildings. It gets more and more easy, and the more and more time you put into it, the more you get out of it. So I will warn you, as soon as you can make everything custom and turn it on a computer, it just opens up time, and you spend more and more time doing it. But you know about that, so yes, sir.
I have a question. On your screen, which I cannot see from here, can you rotate the 360 on the screen?
Oh, yes.
And also, can you get the new the dimensions
Yes.
that you need on the screen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So there's when working with 3D models, there's two parts to it. So you can turn it 360. You can turn it any dimension, anything in space, four-dimensional that you can see.
Okay.
And then you can also, when you build, you can either work in millimeters or inches or whatever, centimeters if you want to. And when you are putting the parts in, you actually are telling it how big you want it to be. And then if you're working with something like AutoCAD, you can actually create blueprints with AutoCAD and do like a full blueprint like you'd expect with front, back, left, right, full dimensions, whole depths, so all that kind of stuff. It works very easily. Any other questions?
So you could resize something if you took an OH part and you wanted to size it? that size?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about like final costs and stuff. Because I think we kind of know what this is about. We know that, and they're selling machines now, we were kidding each other, Home Depot selling machines. Barnes and Noble. is selling
Yeah.
machines.
So the filament itself runs right around the cost of an ink cartridge for a regular printer, somewhere between $20 and $40 depending on what you're using. There's some filaments that are special that are a little more. I'll let these guys talk about cost of printers and things like that.
Hey, I'm Isaiah. I work with Conrad. That's how we ended up here. Yeah, cost is all over the place. I mean, you can, like you said, they're selling them at Home Depot now. You can find them in China. You can find $100,000 machines still. So it really depends on what you want to do. But the what we do is focus on the teaching and the adaptability of it, because the industry is changing so fast, and the types of materials that you can print with and the techniques that you can use to print. We like to make sure that we make a machine that adapts to those changes. You know, we use 3D printed parts on the machines, so when things change or adaptabilities, new processes come out, we can print new parts to make the machines function in that manner.
I know Mattel announced this week a machine for kids
Right.
that will allow kids to make their own toys.
Yeah,
So when I think about that, probably my level.
Well,
is-
what you're getting with that is a point and click type printer. So Mattel partnered with a company called Autodesk, which is one of the biggest software companies on the planet, and they're releasing a printer with a custom built software package that has a bunch of models already built into it that allows kids to go through, select their model, and send it to the printer, and it prints it. But what are they learning?
Yeah.
They're learning how to select through, click on something, and it goes to the printer, and then they have it. It's cool because it's making it in front of them, but they're not learning. You know, so what we like to do is make sure that they understand the fundamentals, what it is that the process of getting there is what is the real education behind it, not just point and click printing, you know. So
Have you had any experience with creating figures that would be three-dimensional figures? Because when I
Figures.
think about railroading,
So
we
I've-
buy our boxcar. we buy-
I've never printed one, but I've seen some really nice ones.
figures like people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look on the back table there, is our contest table,
Uh-huh.
where people have built models and
Yeah.
that's the kind of detail that.
Little
we're talking
Well, the
about.
reason I say it is, in O scale, the 1/48 inch figures, good figures are $5, $6.
Yeah, I used to.
And if I could knock them out and make 100 figures, that's what I do.
Something I have done, has anyone played Risk? So you can print your Risk and then you can finish them by hand and paint them. So you still have to go to the painting, but you can have the shape done. And
So
but then
you
can
could
have-
definitely print figures. You're gonna have to add in
The
the
details.
color and the detail and stuff yourself, but I'm sure you're used to doing that anyways.
Yeah, no,
And it's like,
for me,
and you get all the models that are doing this, you know, but you want it to be doing like this, or, you know, so you gotta like heat him up and bend his arm.
The application I was thinking about, is
Yeah.
if it was just figures, it would have a lot of interest. You know, 135th, 124th, 148th, 187th. And if the figures look, they don't have to be perfection,
Right.
because they're figures, but if they, you could knock them out. And if you had a source for different, or
Right.
if you could move arms,
Right.
you know, that's pretty,
All 100% possible.
I mean, people could be buying that just for that.
So there's a big movement in the Lego industry, and they actually print minifigs, which are the little Lego figures. And they do custom parts, custom whole figures on 3D printers. So I'm sure we could very easily scale it to people for railroad. And that's actually a really good idea.
And one
I
of
have to try and
the biggest things, like Conrad pointed out, is like if his arms are over here, but you want his arms here, well, how do I get his arms over here?
Right.
You know, do I have to buy another one, or can I just change my model to make his
Well,
arms
that's what
over
I'm
here
wondering.
and send it back to
So
him?
there's a 3D program called Poser, which is basically building human models. And you could probably,
Make human?
Yeah, and you could probably very easily just create your basic shape of your human. You could apply some clothing to them, you want to apply some clothing to them, shrink them to the right scale you want. And then Poser is actually for animating people, for creating people and animating them. So you put a bone in the arm, and bones in the arms and things, and the legs. And then you could pose your figure, make a little 3D model, put it in the printer and print it out.
But
So So that's soft enough that you could pose.
Well, no, so like, you do it in the model. The
Yeah.
model, so
Okay.
what the model does is, it creates the human shape for you, you put the detail on you want it, and then you place bones in the program into the figure so that you can pose it, and that's why it's called poser, so you can pose it in whatever pose you want. And animators use this for like TV shows because they build the figure, put the bones in it, import it to the program, and that's what lets them move them around to animate them for movies. But for something like an application like this, in Poser, you can very easily build your figure, put the basic clothes on, put the bones in, pose it the way you wanted it to, export that file, put it in the printer, print that out, and then if you decide that it's not quite right, you can go back into the program that you saved, change your pose a little bit, and do the exact same thing very easily.
And I heard someone mention scanning earlier.
Yeah.
Like, if you wanted figurines too, you could actually scan your grandkids or your kids or your wife or whatever, and they could actually be your figurines as opposed to just pulling the iron out. So you could have your grandson driving the train or whatever.
See, the thing about figures is, once you have the software scaling, you can,
Yeah.
there's so much modeling at different scale. But we're gonna use the same figures, but I'm modeling 148, someone else is modeling 187,
You can absolutely do that.
but it's real scale.
It's very scalable. You can scale both in the program and in the Cura software that we use for the printer.
So what's the largest item,
Oh, go ahead.
what's the largest item that printer-wise can you print? I mean,
So,
Like
this
mine
printer
shell?
here, will print,
20 centimeters cubed.
20 centimeters cubed, so just under 8 inches by 8 inches by 8 inches. So that's a lot. This one will print about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both needed.
And you can do custom things where you make the bed longer, so you can print a longer part. You can make this A-frame taller if you want to print like a skyscraper. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can do. Wow. I know you've had a question for a while.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, going back to the price, what's a basic 3D printer outfit cost?
outfit. Okay, so like the MM1 is the modular 3D printing system with the replaceable heads and adaptable systems. That's $1,500. The MI3 over here, you can buy in a kit for $649, or you can buy it assembled for $1,000.
So you could go with that or that. So you need, that's one machine,
Right.
and you need your computer.
Yeah.
Just
And all
a
the
regular
software,
laptop.
everything, all the software is free.
The software is open
Every
source.
piece of software and the platforms themselves are open source, meaning that all the source files are readily available. All the firmwares that make the machine work are all available to you. We don't hold any proprietary knowledge.
Something we can do if some of you are interested is we can make a workshop on 3D modeling, basic 3D modeling, how you can apply it to your projects. We could do something
Definitely
like
do that.
how to texture a wall, how to pose a figurine, how to. We can go through that if you guys are interested.
That's the question, at 8 by 8 by 8, and your building, your background is architectural. So my way of doing that is I could build a building, I could build a building very easily, polyform, with intricate detail, gable, corbels underneath, and 8 by 8 by 8, that's a lot of building.
So
Or you could slice it.
one of the
into
models that I
different
found is
together.
the annex building for up in Harper's Ferry. So Harper's Ferry did a project recently where they gave students access to a 3D design program, and they challenged them to build buildings within Harper's Ferry. So you can actually go on Google. This is one of the first things I found. You can find all the major buildings for Harper's Ferry, 3D model that you can just print out on your printers. And I have one of these at home, and the model for the annex was about, it just barely fit on the bed, but you can then take it to a design program, slice it up, so like, for example, you could print the whole thing at one time, but it'd be easier to print the walls and then with the interior detail and the roof separately, so you can put the roof on later or take it off or light it inside, things like that. Yes, sir.
So, assuming you had the hardware, assuming you had the software and the design, how much would it cost for the actual production part?
So,
For example, pick something
Just
medium
the
size.
ink cartridge.
so like this.
Yeah.
This is what, 35?
Yeah, 35.
And this is pretty high quality filament. You get filament cheaper, but I wouldn't suggest going too much cheaper than this. And this will print
It's 1,000.
It's a 1,000 kilograms, so
So it's a
1,000 grams. So in print, like if you notice all of the parts on our printers, these are 3D printed parts that we printed on our printers. One of these spools will help print the whole layout, or if you want to get a couple spools, you could do different colored designs for, like if you want to do your tracks one color, just so you know, and then your buildings one color, and the detail for the buildings another color. You could do there's all kinds of different, and it's not just like bright colors like this. You can get in grays. This was printed in a silver. He's setting up and he's printing with a filament that actually has metal, ground metal in the filament. So once it's done printing, you'll be able to buff it and it'll look like it's a piece of metal.
I mean, the filaments in general, there's so many different types of filaments available in the market, and filaments is changing faster than 3D printing itself. So, I mean, there's everything from woods to sandstones.
So to answer your question,
there's tons.
one filament would be $30, and you could build a city layout with it.
What I'm thinking is probably like Tom said, it's best thing to buck is small parts, like people, figures, but the figures are only like that big.
Yeah,
So you can make a lot.
you could make.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
could
you can
make
make a lot.
You probably would never run out.
100
If you
plus.
did,
Is there loss of material? I mean, I see that much bulk in the line. Is there any loss of that, or does it all get put into?
It all
the
gets
model?
put into it.
So
Okay.
it depends on the way your model is. If you have a figurine that's going like this, we
Right.
can't suspend plastic in midair, so we
Right.
have to support underneath it. So there would be a little bit of waste that'll build a support structure underneath
And you
it. So
can
what we
do-
like to do is
yeah.
teach modeling techniques that avoid waste, because with additive manufacturing, building from the bottom up, we like to teach modeling techniques that have curves to them and 45 and 60-degree angles. That way we're not wasting material by building support structures.
But I mean, the more you get into it, you can take that support material, save it, and then grind it and turn it back into filament and use it again. So
Okay. I watched
everything's
the
perfect.
documentary last night that I had DVR'd, and they were modeling the frozen man. He's like, kind of like this, because he was in a night, he was a 5,000-year-old frozen man. And they modeled him in a 3D printer, and the printer was as big as the table. And it's a full size, and they took it to an artist, and he painted it up and detailed it. And you put the two side by side, and it's like, it was hard to tell which one was the real one, which one was. But they did that all in 3D printing, and you're talking about the waste. Yeah, you couldn't support his arm out there, and it had like little things that went down that supported his arm, and then they got
The other one it might be useful for is something about the size of the base. Just the base of that would be like a wall module, for modular buildings.
Yeah,
You might want 20 of those, but that would be fairly cheap to do that size.
Yeah, with additive manufacturing too, you can like this is hollow, you know, so it's just the outer shell that it's printing, and it's printing just a small amount of material. So it's not like this is a solid block of plastic. So there's different ways depending on what you're applying it. Like all the pieces for our machines, we print with 3 shells on the outer wall. So you see the cubes on the structure, but it's 3 solid shells on the outer wall, and then it's just hollow infill on the inside. So you can reduce it down to 2 shells to reduce the amount of plastic. So there's lots of ways to conserve material.
The software you use, that's 3D CAD program.
So these printers were designed on actually an animation program that you can also use for CAD called Blender, which is absolutely free. But there are things like FreeCAD and some other programs that you can get that are free. Even Autodesk, the company we were talking about, this partner, they have a thing called 123D Design, which is a free program you can download from them that does all the CAD 3D development.
I use AutoSketch, which is
Okay.
2-dimensional.
Yeah.
You need a 3-dimensional program.
You need a third dimension, yeah.
If you already use a two-dimensional way, it's really easy to move
I mean,
You're just extruding from there.
yeah, pretty much all you're doing is you're taking the thing you've built in 2D and then adding depth to it so that it has another dimension. And then you can touch it up if you want.
There's lots and lots of available models already on the internet. I just did some quick searching the other day, and it was like there was tons and tons and tons of scale buildings and trains and all kinds of things that are already printable
It was a
files.
really cool bridge.
Yeah.
We were gonna print,
Bridges.
but it took like 12 hours because it's really, really little columns. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
So there's-
John, just so you know, like shake weights, if you do the design, Shapeways makes the part for you, and then you work out, they keep the design so that I can use it. And I think once it's out there, it's like 35 bucks for like an O-scale diesel ship. So 35 bucks to Shapeway, and they send me a diesel ship.
And there's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
We have some local people here in Hampton Roads and up in Hampton and Newport News. There's a couple guys that come to the 757 Makerspace to do that. There's Shapeways, which is the big one, but you can find them all over the place. And there's people who do that. We do that for small parts sometimes, but we probably should do it like
I only
big
said it
work.
as a way of justifying the cost.